Welcome to DIYEasyCrafts.com, how to make an American flag themed patriotic Bowie knife. Now this particular Bowie is almost 12 inches long. It has a Carvex American flag handle. The blade is etched with stars, has a brass bolster, and it also has spine etching. A very unique, yet fairly easy to make, American flag themed Bowie knife. Now this project starts with a 1095 high carbon steel blank, which is available from DIYEasyCrafts.com. Most knife making projects start by using a little Dyken blue on the edge, and then you scribe two parallel center lines called railroad tracks. When we're grinding the bevels, we're going to really be just keeping an eye on those center lines. So we don't want to grind past that line. The particular workstation that I use is a Jason Northgard tilt table. It's not really a bevel jig. It's really just a tilted work table, but it's really kind of cool because it allows you to set the angle of the bevel, and then you can just start grinding from almost any point on the knife. You don't have to go from left to right or from right to left. You just keep an eye on that center line, and as long as your finished product is ground evenly to that center along the whole length of the blade, that bevel is going to come out perfect. Now, having said that, the last pass or so, you do want to make a smooth pass from one side to the other. So I'm just going to slowly start. I'm using an Oregon Blade Maker 2x72 grinder. It's paired up with a 2 horsepower motor, so it's a pretty powerful unit. I'm using 36 grit paper, so it's a pretty aggressive paper. You can move a lot of material very quickly. With this tilt table setup, you don't have to go fast. You could go slow. You could slow down the RPMs and take your time, or you can kind of really lean into it and remove as much material as quickly as you like. Just a different view. You can almost see the center lines that I'm grinding to on this video. And I'm just holding the flat surface of the blade flat against that tilt table. And the bevel will end up following the curvature of the blade. I have a little cooling bucket next to the grinder, and it's positioned high enough so that I don't have to bend over every couple minutes just to cool off the blade. Now in this particular project, this video would end up being too long for everything that's going on with this blade, so I am going to break it up into 2 videos. The first video I'm going to cover grinding the bevels, as well as doing the etching on the blade, and then heat treating. And then for the second video, we'll finish up the blade by getting the brass bolsters as well as the handles. And also at that time, doing the spine etching. So what I've done here is I finished the bevel on one side, and what are we, about 3 or 4 minutes into the project? Really doesn't take very long at all. I've now flipped over, and I'm going to start to bevel the other side of the blade, basically doing the exact same thing. Cooling off the blade every couple minutes or every couple of passes. Anytime I see an area on the blade that is not grinding evenly to that center line, I can spend a little bit more time on that particular area. Jason says that this is the closest people will get to actually freehand grinding bevels, as compared to other jigs that firmly hold the jig in position and glide along a 90-degree work table. Most of those will end up with a straight cut bevel or straight line bevel, which is fine. I mean, it makes a very nice bevel, but towards the end, the tip, your bevel may not be the same height. What I'm looking at here is the bevel plunge cut. I want to start to even up the plunge cut. Usually when I do bevels, I stay a little bit further away with the plunge cut, and then when I'm almost finished, then I'll put the plunge where I want it. I'll just grind that plunge by eye on both sides so that they match nicely. Now the plunge cut's almost even. The bevel's almost ready to go off to heat treating. Just going to finish that plunge cut up. So now the plunge on both sides of the blade is uniform. And the bevels are done. Or the rough bevels are done. After heat treating, we're going to come back and clean this blade up. The blanks that I use already come with 1/4 inch holes for the pins, for the handle pins. I did add 2 1/8 inch holes for the brass bolsters. You do want to remember to do that before heat treating. Now, I like to do my blade etching before heat treating. I just think that it ends up with a darker result doing it so. I cut a bunch of stars out on a Silhouette Cameo vinyl cutting machine, and then I'm using a clear transfer film to transfer those self-adhesive vinyl stars onto the blade. And this will act, or each one of the stars will act as a resist. So basically the etching process is going to etch everything except for the stars. So the stars will end up being shiny. The background behind the stars will end up being etched and dull and dark. Now, of course, I don't want really deep etching on the bevels that we just ground, so just manually, I'm going to spend less time on that bevel area. Now, I etch just with salt water and a 12-volt battery charger. I wrap up a little bit of gauze onto the negative lead. The positive lead gets attached to the blade, and then I dip it in some warm salt water. This is set at 2 amps, 12 volts, 2 amps. And the secret here is that you don't want to spend too much time in one spot. I can spend 10 to 20 seconds in a spot, and then I want to pick up that gauze and move it. The reason for that is I don't want to overheat the vinyl stickers so that they lose their adhesion. And this does generate a little bit of heat, so you do want to move that gauze around a little bit. I want a really deep etch on these blades, so I'm spending a minute to a minute and a half total time on every area of the blade that I want etched. Not a very difficult process. The whole thing, probably I can do one side in 10 or 15 minutes. I've turned off the battery charger. I've disconnected my positive lead, and I'm just going to wipe off all the dirt, and then I can start to pick off all of the vinyl stickers. Now again, if you're going to do this before heat treating like I am, you want to make sure that this is a very deep etch. These blades are going to get sanded lightly after heat treating and also after tempering. So this etching has to stand up to 2 light sandings. I find that minute and a half really works well. So the heat treating process, my friend Jason heats up the blades with a oxyacetylene torch. He heats them up until they're cherry red, non-magnetic, and then quenches them in oil. This results in a nice Rockwell. Usually we end up with a Rockwell 58 on the C scale. After that, I throw them in my wife's oven, 375 for 3 hours. Then I turn off the oven and I let them cool overnight as a tempering. It makes the blades less brittle. So now they're hard and less brittle. And now I'm just going to clean off, all of that carbonization from the heat treating and from the tempering. And I do this with I happen to have a 220 grit paper in the sander. Very lightly, very quickly. And you're just cleaning off the surface or the stars. Of course, I'm going to do that to both sides. And then the next step is going to be to clean up the bevels. So now I'm going back to that Oregon 2x72 grinder. I've got my tilt table still in place. I have not changed the angle on that, but I have changed the grit of the paper. So I'm using an 80 grit paper right now. You can certainly go, any grit you want. You could go 120 or 220 if you wanted a really polished bevels. For the knives that I make, I kind of like to see the lines from the grinding on the bevel. So I'm using an 80 or a worn 80. Because I haven't changed the angle on this tilt table, I can go right back to grinding and just apply, a little bit more pressure. On this particular knife, I left that that area between the scribe lines on the thickness a little bit on the thick side, so I am going to spend a little bit more time on this final grinding just to bring my my edges together. Really doesn't take long. I have a work light on my sander, which is great for my old eyes, but it doesn't work very well for video. So I apologize for the bright spots in the middle of the screen or on the knife, from the reflection of the knife. Now, while I'm finishing up this grinding, I want to invite everybody to join us on the Facebook group, Knives and Knife Making. You can just search on Facebook for Knives and Knife Making. And by all means, join the group and share some of the images of your own creations. So I've cleaned up the bevel on one side. Now I'm just going to flip it over, clean up the bevel on the other side. Basically, we're going to end up with a knife that is almost done. We're going to have the bevels ground. We're going to have the blade etching done. We're going to have the holes in it for the bolster, the 1/8 inch holes for the bolster. And really all that's going to be remaining is adding the scales or the handles, the brass bolsters, as well as some finishing spine etching. And I'm forgetting, and of course the leather sheath. I didn't want to cut out too much of this grinding. I really wanted to give you a real example of how long each one of these blades takes. It seems long when you're just watching it on the screen, but in reality, I think we're spending 4 minutes, maybe 5 minutes on each side for the main rough etching. Rough beveling, and then also just 2 or 3 minutes per side on the finish beveling. So the whole process really doesn't take that long. There are certainly jigs available that allow you to apply pressure, that allow you to grind bevels a lot faster. This is just the method that I'm using right now. It really is my preferred method because you really have total control over all of the grinding on the bevels. What I'm seeing here is still just a couple of blemishes from the etching. So I'm just grinding a little bit of material away just to polish that or those areas up a little bit. And the bevels are completely done now. That blade is ready to be sharpened. Please check us out on the web at DIYEasyCrafts.com. Be sure to check out our other how-to videos. And remember that this is really just part one of a two-part series of making this American flag Patriot-themed Bowie knife. Thank you very much.